Good afternoon, everyone. This afternoon, for our 3 to 4 session, we'll be hearing from Ashey Rockwell. The title of her presentation is Building Students' Data Skills Through Experiential Learning, How to Adapt or Adopt Our Public Interest Data Literacy Learning Lab's Open Educational Resources. So Ashey has a couple of people on a couple of her colleagues on the call with her today, but Ashey's the one presenting. So by request, I'll just be introducing Ashey. Ashey Rockwell is the Data Literacy and Learning Specialist in the Research Data Services Department at Georgia State University. She focuses on building data literacy curricula and programming for undergraduates. She also focuses on faculty teaching for undergraduates. For the PIDLit initiative mentioned before, Ashey and her colleagues taught a 2-semester experiential learning course that connected students with community partners and taught students how to apply data skills to address the real world problem of food insecurity. So thank you, Ashey. I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Denise and Charlene. Here, I'm going to share my screen. All right. So as Denise mentioned, myself and my colleagues taught a 2-semester course, and I want to give a little bit of background before I get into that. So this started in 2020 when Mandy, Halley, and I were awarded a grant from New America's Public Interest Technology University Network, which is a big name, which they shortened to PIT-UN, to teach our course. And so deriving from that name, so PIT-UN is focused on establishing the field of public interest technology. And so they want to shape a world where technology is being used for the public interest, and that folks who are using technology are always keeping public interest in mind, or people who are working on public issues can harness the power of technology. And so for our grant proposal, we focused kind of on a key component of technology. And for us, that was data literacy. So when we proposed this course, we wanted to focus in on data literacy and how it relates to a particular public interest. And for our case, that was food insecurity. So as Denise mentioned, I'm going to be going over I'm going to be leading this workshop. However, my colleagues, Halley and Mandy, the co-directors of the PIDLit Lab, are also on this call and will be in the chat sharing links and also there to answer any questions. And so welcome, Halley and Mandy. So for the PIDLit Learning Lab, we developed and taught a 2-semester course, and so I'm going to start out by kind of giving a course overview and then giving an introduction into our PIDLit open educational resources. So part of this public interest aspect, we wanted to continue that by converting all the work we did from the course into open educational resources, which you can find at lib.gsu.edu/PIDLit-OER by scanning the QR code. That will be put in the chat, and also we'll be sharing the link in the QR code again throughout this presentation. And so in this workshop, we'll go over was there a question? No, okay. We'll go over the course, and we'll also go over the guide. And one of our hopes is that folks will be able to that this course will either inspire you to adapt or adopt in whole or parts of this course in your own classes, either as a complete course or just as an assignment. So we will also make sure we dedicate time for folks to come up with their own ideas. We have some ideas on how you can adapt and adopt it. but we want to make sure we have time to discuss those ideas as well. So kind of to step back and give a really broad overview of this course, and one of the things that we think that can be adapted or adopted is the overall design of the course. And so that overall design includes combining a skill, learning some type of skill. For us, that was data literacy and data skills, and combining that with a social issue. So for us, that was food insecurity, with the goal of when we combine those two things, we could help address the social issue. So our course consisted of experiential learning that taught research and data skills. So the students got to participate in data collection and data analysis. They also got to work with community partners who were already either doing data related work or working on food insecurity in our community. And so they were able to learn from our partners and work with them as well. And then we had other forms of data and food insecurity related hands-on working hours. And this ultimately ended up with the students developing some form of data product and presenting that data product to our community partners. And I just want to note here, when we say data product, we are talking about infographics, dashboards, one-pagers, and policy memos that are relying on data. Um, our classes were mostly sociology and public health students, although it was open to any student. We wanted to make sure that we weren't expecting people to already have really advanced level data skills or really advanced like computer science skills. We weren't asking the students to create an app or anything. So but we wanted them to create a product that was useful for our partners. To give a bit more detail on this course overview is, because this was a very I want to be clear that this was time and labor intensive. And so many of these aspects of the course we knew that this was going to be labor intensive and time intensive, but some of these things took longer and or were more complicated than we anticipated. So I want to be honest and clear about that at the beginning, but also note that if you were to adapt something similar, you do not have to do it this way. And we're going to give a few ideas on ways that you could cut down the labor and time intensity that ended up coming along with doing something like this. So before this timeline even began, so we have fall 2023, which is when we taught our first course, and spring 2024. But before that, starting which would have been spring 2023, we were working with our community partners and to figure out what made sense for them. What could we create during this course that could give giving students both an opportunity to build their data skills and also doing something that the partners actually needed or wanted. And while we would have loved to be able to do that in part of the class, we knew that this was going to take time. And so we had to do that ahead of time. So my first uh, potential adapting or adopting idea is to limit the partners. We had multiple partners and we loved our partners. It just, as I'll show in a second, each partner has very different needs. And so trying to balance that with also creating something that is reasonable for students to do. In this case, we were lucky we had 2 semesters, but to do something that in a 1 semester course, definitely having all those different partners would make it much more complicated. So focusing on one partner. Um, so we establishing those partnerships ahead of time, working with those partners. From communicating with our partners, we realized that some of them wanted to focus on, and I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to come back to that slide that I just showed you in a second. But so our partners, 2 of our partners included Panthers Pantry, and one of them was MARTA Markets, which are markets that are at transit stations that are kind of like little mini farmers markets for at different train stations. And so obviously those two groups are interested in very different things. Panthers Pantry was interested in food insecurity at Georgia State, though Georgia State's pantry, and MARTA was interested in public transportation users and those who could potentially use MARTA markets. And so we needed to create two different surveys. And if you've ever created a survey, you know that you need to go and you need to figure out your research questions and your survey questions. And you need to get IRB approval. And so these were all things that we had to do outside of the class, although we think this would have been a great learning experience for our students. It just was not feasible. And so for us to do in a short time period. And so we did this before the course started. We worked on developing these surveys and getting our partners approval. Another one of our partners was Wholesome Wave Georgia, and they had already done focus groups and we're going to plan on doing more focus groups. And so what they were interested in was for our students to do some analysis, some qualitative analysis of the transcripts of those focus groups. So we already got 3 data sets going on right here. Again, that was a lot, that's a lot. So maybe if this is something you want to adopt or adapt, again, narrowing down the partners are narrowing down the data sets you're going to use. Just so to go back to that overarching slide, we developed the surveys ahead of time so we could get IRB approval, which we timed just right. We got it right right at the beginning of the course, and so we were able to add our students onto our IRB application, which of itself is a process. So again, more time to consider if you're going to be collecting your own data. That first semester, students were able to get hands-on experience doing data collection, and so for the student survey, they although we also had GSU sent out a randomized sample of GSU students, um, copies of the survey to be taken. We also mostly, not necessarily on the data side, but mostly on the side of we wanted our students to get experience having to recruit folks to take a survey. Our students recruited other students to take the survey in person. With a MARTA market survey, that also required in-person recruitment. It was a bit more complex because we needed the students to be at the MARTA stations when MARTA markets were occurring. But that gave students the opportunity. They had to go up to people. They had to ask them, will you complete the survey? Here's a link, a QR code in order to do the survey. We ended up getting a lot of feedback from our students that this was a very important experience, and being able to build up that, like, approaching a stranger and asking them to do something is not something that a lot of the students thought about before when they think about research. They don't think about that step. And one of our students ended up getting a position with an organization that is focused on transportation, being able to point to this as an example of skills she already had because she needed to survey folks who were using MARTA, and she was able to say that she directly had those skills. So after we collected that data during that first semester, students were able to do some qualitative data analysis on our open-ended questions, but whenever you collect data, there was a lot of data cleaning and prep that we needed to do before we could get into the fun quantitative analysis. So that was saved for spring semester. We did do some, although data cleaning and prep is something important to doing research and data analysis, again, we had to do for time's sake, that was something that we had to do. And when I say we, I mean mostly Halley. She worked on the data cleaning and prep for our surveys. And so shout out to Halley for that. And we did get to go over with our students some of what goes into that data cleaning, but we didn't make them responsible for that. And then also in the spring semester, students were able to actually start doing analysis. So they got to come up with their research questions. Are broken up into teams, and each team, luckily, since we had about 6 people from the first semester continue into our second semester, about each team had someone from the previous semester as well, so to kind of share the skills that they learned in that previous semester. And then they were able to present their data product and results to their partners. So now that we kind of have this overview out of the way, I think that it's really important to kind of understand that overarching overview of what the course is in order for some of these open educational resources that we're going to talk about and more specific resources related to the course for those to make sense. So as I mentioned, we created a website that has all of our resources related to the course. And I'm going to kind of go into more specifics about the different assignments. And so as you're going through this, I want you to think about if there's anything that would make sense that you would want to potentially adapt or adopt or highlight in a course that you're teaching or you want to teach, or something that maybe you're going to be able to add a new way you're going to incorporate some more data skills into your course, or maybe you're not going to be teaching a data course, but you want to incorporate more working with community partners or something like that. And so on this slide is a screenshot of the front of the top part of our website where we have all of our different resources. And so that the first thing you'll see there is our syllabi. I kind of just wanted to show a little bit. This is from our two syllabi. So we taught in fall and spring. And these are our course requirements. We're going to go in a bit of detail. We see the big difference between fall and spring is our hands-on learning / research hours, because a lot of that needed to be done in that first semester. And because we didn't have much data for students to actually analyze that first semester, the points for hands-on learning and research hours were there was a larger distribution of points for that first semester compared to the second semester, and it kind of got flipped to that final group project being worth more. And so something else that I just want to note is that we taught this as a 2-semester course, and so that means each semester was unique and students were able to get credit for each semester because they were not the same course. But that means that we needed to teach the students. Some of the students in the second semester did not have any of the background that the students who had already taken it. So we needed to find creative ways to make sure that everyone were able to get on the same page quickly, but also not being repetitive between the semesters. So the besides, when I first thing I look at is syllabus is going to the reading list, like what is going to be assigned. I wanted to talk about this as an important aspect of creating something that is open for students, even though it may not be completely open access for students. We were very focused on making sure we could provide a class that was not going to cost any additional money to our students. We knew this class was going to be more demanding of students' time than a regular course because they're going to need to, do data collection, all of these things. But we didn't want to add any additional costs. And so all of our reading materials were either available for free online or they were free through the library. And so the students were not paying anything additional in order to complete their readings in this course. And this is, and for folks and since I feel like I'm in a safe space here with open educational resource, people are interested in that. This can be hard, especially like we're teaching a course that never existed before. We want to teach data skills. We also want to cover food insecurity, and reading is having students do the reading was really important because we had, such little time to teach both things. And so finding resources that are both that are free and also helpful can be difficult. So I wanted to point out a few tips. One, if you do find a resource within your library, make sure that it is has enough copies available for the amount of students in your course. I encourage you to reach out to your librarian at your university if you're not sure how to tell this. At GSU, we're lucky we have this. When you go to look up in our databases, we have this thing that tells you if it is unlimited. Sometimes we found a book that we thought was going to be great, but there was only one copy available, and so we had to decide to use a different resource. Um, Another thing that we did, since we were doing a mix of book chapters, podcasts, articles, reports, is when there was something like a book that we thought would be great to assign, but it wasn't available for free to the students, and maybe we didn't want them necessarily to have to read the whole book. Um, Finding podcast interviews with the author of that book, discussing that book can be a great alternative, especially if the goal is for them to understand like an overview. So one of the things that we did was there's a really interesting book that we wanted students to read because it's related to food insecurity and also gets at the um, qualitative aspect of doing research related to food insecurity. The book was called How the Other Half Eats: The Untold Story of Food and Inequality in America. That was not something that we could have the students read. It wasn't available for free. And so instead we had them listen to a podcast with the author, and that really I think was more efficient. It condensed everything from the book and was probably more interesting for the students, honestly. Um, Again, reading was extremely important. Having the students doing those readings and podcasts was really important. And so we wanted to make sure that students were actually doing this. Uh, so our reading check was our media reflections. We call them media reflections instead of reading reflections because we were giving them not just readings. There was also videos and podcasts. Um, and this is something that I think is really easily adaptable. I've used a similar setup in other courses that I've taught and have found it really effective in getting students to break down what you have assigned to them. So getting them to find the main arguments or the main points, depending on what you're having them read or listen to, the evidence that was used, relating that to stuff that they've already learned in the course or from previous assignments. And then the fourth thing is giving the chance for students to do some self-reflecting, either thinking about how that material relates to them, and for our case, since we're focused on food insecurity, we did not want to force our students to have to disclose things that they might be uncomfortable about. And so we always give them an option to tell us about if they agree with the opinions of the authors or things like that. But that chance to self-reference, we know, is a useful tool in memory recall and can be helpful in helping students break down um, the concepts that they are learning. And also having this like check-in meant when we did discussions in class that students were guaranteed to have at least read one of the articles that were assigned before that discussion. So now I want to give kind of a more detailed example of the type of resources we've created in our OER guide. And so I'm going to focus in on one of our data dive assignments. So we had multiple data dive assignments, but I'm going to focus on this one and kind of break down all of the different parts of things that we have on our OER site. And so you can if you go to our site, you can find this data dive assignment, but I'm going to show you some screenshots and kind of like breaking up how it is broken out. And so for each of our main areas on our OER site, we have an info doc. And this info doc is going to tell you give you a curriculum overview. So telling you basically a short summary of this assignment, why we did it, how long it takes, how long it took or should take, the materials we use. So it's going to give you a breakdown of all the materials we use, which are also included on the site, and give you a little bit more detail about those. And then instructions on our process, like how we did this in class, what was our steps in this. So for this example, the data dive was focused on pivot tables and using Google Sheets to create pivot tables and charts. And so um, this info doc tells you that we had a lecture in class where we went over this. We did some practice pivot tables in the course, and the students were assigned an assignment. It also goes over the fact that we took real data set, we modified it so that way it was something that could be opened up in Google Sheets because the original data set was too large. Um, but we have all that information on just these two little pages to kind of give you an overview of the materials. So the second thing we have is the slides. So from that lecture, we have all of the slides going over how to create a pivot table. We also have the first thing we started with is how to enter data into a spreadsheet. That is something that we quickly got in there because uh, folks don't know how to do that because you think that it just magically appears there, but someone's got to enter that data. And so this is a good opportunity for us to show that. So we have the slides there. And then we also have the data set, as I mentioned. And this data set, it includes each tab has example pivot tables and charts that were created from the data set. And so if you're wanting to use the same data set, those pivot tables are already created and potential charts are already created there. And then finally, we have our actual assignment that the students had to take home and complete to practice their new pivot table skills. These quotes on here are, there'll be some more quotes throughout this presentation, but these are quotes from our students from their final reflections and about things that they found that were important from the course. And so I've included those just to show you that this is the things that we are going over were things that students valued. Okay. So beyond the data dive into pivot tables, we also had a data dive using SPSS, and um, we part of something that our team does at Research Data Services is we have these pre-recorded video tutorials that are associated with badges. So these video tutorials are available online and are free to anyone to watch the video tutorials. Unfortunately, our badges are only for folks who have GSU email addresses. But basically you can watch these videos and take short quiz and get a badge. And so since we are already having students learn things like SPSS, we had them do the SPS badge so that they would have another credential to put on their LinkedIn account and show, hey, I have these skills. And so for over the semester, for a more quantitative applied research, we had students do our data ready badge, which was focused on really basic data literacy skills, and our SPSS ready badge and our data viz ready badge, which was focused on Tableau and Social Explorer. For qualitative research, the students were given opportunities to do different types of qualitative research. So one, as I mentioned, that first semester, they had a chance to get access to the open-ended questions from our surveys. So that picture is actually we printed out all of those open-ended questions and cut them up. And so those students are organizing and coding with sticky notes, with markers. They are doing some hands-on qualitative manual coding. Mandy also did a awesome lecture where she had an interview related to food insecurity and taught the students how to do qualitative coding both inside and outside of in vivo. And as I mentioned previously, we had those focus groups transcripts from Wholesome Life, Georgia. And so the students were able to work on using in vivo to code those. We also, since we are going over in vivo, had the students do the in vivo batch. An important aspect of this course, and something that I think is can be adapted, is doing hands-on learning outside of class time as well. So that first semester, a big portion of our hands-on learning was the hours that students went to actually do research. So or to help us collect data. So going to the MARTA markets to recruit folks. But also we wanted to have students out in the community, volunteering, learning more about food insecurity, but then other other forms of hands-on learning that weren't necessarily just related to the class. So we did have things like um, volunteering at Open Hand Atlanta and the Atlanta Community Food Bank, which are directly related to food insecurity. But we also wanted students to build senses about data literacy. If there were things that they could build their data skills on that weren't already going to be covered in the class, uh, we gave those as options for our hands-on learning hours. And so we really relied on a lot of the workshops that the library was already putting on, and then other academic related conferences and events that were happening. So students would get an opportunity to learn from a lot of different sources. And so, of course, this the course, the big idea, the big product at the end, specifically in the second semester, was that we wanted our students to be able to use those qualitative and quantitative skills to create something and to do do analysis and create something for our community partners. And so our final project was that students needed to come up with research questions, which they were able to do in conjunction with the community partners. We had Community Partner Day where they were able to talk to community partners to try to tailor their research questions and their potential data product to something that makes sense for our community partners. Um, we had them come up with descriptive questions, inferential questions, and qualitative questions, and then and create a proposal that basically outlined all of their research questions, how they're going to do the analysis, and what kind of product they're going to create. Um, we have a lot of documents in this final project because this was something that we needed to break down to make it easy for students to do over the course of the semester, and also kind of map um, how to get from a research question to the analysis to uh, the reporting of the results and to the data product. And so there's a lot more resources available on our site, but I just wanted to give you an overview. We also include a full example proposal. So we have the outline, but then an example proposal as well. Okay, so these are some of the products that our students created. And so some students created infographics. We also have some of their presentation results. And if you're interested, we have links to the students' presentations and to their products they created. Also on our site, that's in a special section called that is under PIDLit student work. And so you can see that as well. At the end of the semester, we had the students do final reflections, and this is something else that I think, although there's a few words that you may want to change in this, that could be applied to any course. We designed these questions not only one for us to get information to help us to figure out did this course work, um, but really importantly, give students a chance to summarize the skills that they were able to either build upon or gain during the course, and to put those in terminology that they could use later on when they are applying for jobs or applying for grad school. And we were lucky enough that during this process, we did have a student, again, who was able to directly talk about the skills that she had built in the course and used those in an interview, and then luckily was able to get the job. But we also had other students talk about how there were skills that they were going to be applying to grad school, and giving them this opportunity to put those into words and reflect on that, I think is very important, and something that could be easily adapted to other courses. Plus, it's way better than the information you get back from the end of the semester. The thing that, at least at Georgia State, that students automatically have to take a multiple choice questionnaire and potentially feedback, maybe written feedback if they decide to fill it out. This gave us a lot more information and helped us shape kind of what we were going to do in the second semester. So there are more resources. I know I feel like I've gone over so much already, but there are even more resources available on our site, including lectures on food insecurity, research data ethics, measurement, all sorts of things. And so there is more than just what I've mentioned right now, but I want to make sure that we have a chance to uh, talk about um, potential ways to adapt the course. And so we have so again, this is where another link to our resources, to our resource guide, um, lib.gsu.edu/PIDLit OER, where you can find all of these resources. I wanted to kind of give an idea. So at the beginning, we talked about like how the course structure is something that could be adapted for another course. And I wanted to go with an example that is not related to data necessarily at all, but hopefully as an idea of how this could be something that's used um, in other fields as well. So I think you could apply this course structure to filmmaking. So you could have filmmaking be the skill, housing issues be the social issue or topic. Your experiential learning could include focusing on teaching students the production, post-production aspect of filmmaking. You can still do those working with community partners, bringing in community partners related to housing issues, related to folks who are already working on filmmaking, and having students do those hands-on hours related activities. And instead of your deliverable being a data product, it could be a short documentary or a promotional video for that community partner. So that's my potential example of adapting the overall course. However, we can come up with lots of examples on how you could adapt different aspects of the course. And so I want to give us about, let me check the time. I want to give us about um, 10 minutes to come up with other options. So we have this a Miro board that you can go to, and I'm going to put the link in the chat. I'm going to, oh, okay, so that's okay. The link should work for you in the chat. Um, you can go here. Right now we have it broken up into some sections. So if you want to think about things that you could adapt to the course setup, you can put that here. You can click on a sticky note and start typing. If you liked something that someone else has, we have some examples already set in here. If you like something that somebody else already came up with, you can zoom, oop, make that go away. You can zoom and click on, oh, that one did not work for me. If you click on this, you should be able to like it, or put in your own, I'll put that back, your own emoji there. So we're gonna give about 10 minutes for you to work on coming up with potential ways you could adapt this courses. If you are like, I'm a student, I don't know what I'm doing here, we still are very interested in your feedback. If you want to put in things like, oh, things that maybe you would have wanted to learn in a class that you took, that is valuable. You can also put your questions or comments in the chat, and during this time we can um, answer some of your questions, or if you wanted to share any of your ideas, you can tell us on the chat, or you can raise your hand and we can unmute you. Um, I'm gonna go ahead and be quiet so you guys can think about things and come up with your own ideas for adapting and adopting the course. It's so fun to watch things moving around on the on the Miro board. If anyone has any questions or wants to share uh, a way that they would want to adapt the course or adapt aspects of the course, please feel free to, you can raise your hand in WebEx um, at, I think it's at the bottom of the page or at the bottom of WebEx, there is a little hand function. If you raise your hand, then we can unmute you or give you permission to be unmuted. And so you can feel free to ask a question or share a way that you might adapt or adopt the materials. So that is 10 minutes. If anyone, you can keep adding to the Miro board. I wanted to read a few of the examples. And again, if you have any questions, you can either put them in the chat or you can raise your hand and we can unmute you. We have students discuss how their positionality and intersectionality influence what questions they ask in an interview and how they'd interpret the data. That is really good. That's something that um, when although the students didn't get to develop the survey questions in the actual surveys that we administered, we did go over survey question creation and all that. That is really important, how those questions are worded or what questions you're asking. I I also really like this AI, like testing AI versus how AI would code something versus when you hand code it. Um, I think that the students, if you've never had to do qualitative coding by hand, then I feel like the students getting that experience and then also seeing how things can be tricky. And I think, yeah, I really like that idea of seeing what the students can uh, code on themselves and then how that compares to uh, AI tools doing that coding. Yeah, having students generate their own qualitative data by doing their own interviews, developing those. So ours, our project focused on, I feel like we had a bunch of aspects going on, and that is what kind of made it difficult. And pulling out just one aspect, this could be something just focusing on qualitative data, doing something where students are collectively coming up with a script for in-depth interviews, but they're all doing those in-depth interviews separately and bringing that all together. I think that would be really, really interesting and a great way to teach those skills. And uh, have students do elevator pitches and share with partners. That is really good. So like one of the things that we talk to the students about is that the products that you're creating for your partners, a lot of cases for our community partners, they needed data for applying for grants or for doing presentations with folks in order to get funding. And so they wanted potentially a data graphic that they could use, or something that they could use to highlight in those important moments of, especially for nonprofit organizations, getting funding. And I think elevator pitches, that is a great example of something that you could do in a course, and with connection with your community partners, and as something that they can actually use um, as they continue, because they can use those things to help them um, in networking and and gaining funding. Oh yes, this is having students critique the survey questions after the data collected. Yeah, so this was actually something that we developed our survey questions ahead of time, and um, we had to talk about when we were doing the data analysis, like, these questions are very limited. We critiqued our own survey questions in this course about, like, oh, wouldn't it have been better if we would have asked a different question, or asked this question a different way? We can only say certain things. And yeah, I think we have an entire lecture that's just on survey questions and kind of like how to create good survey questions. And so I think that's a really good tool that you could utilize for that. Okay, make sure I'm not seeing it. Oh yeah, this is um, after students do, so all of our students, because this was um, a IRB, a study that students needed to get IRB approval for in order to be part of the data collection process and the data analysis process. All of our students had to go through the city training, which GSU requires in order to be put on an IRB project. And that's something that we really wish that we had more time, was they they have to read a bunch of things, they go through a bunch of modules, and we wish we would have had more time to actually discuss in class what they actually learned in those modules and what was missing. I think that is a great idea. Okay, so I'm gonna wrap up. I'm gonna go back to my presentation. Again, if you have any questions, um, let us know. I just want to do a quick kind of summary as we wrap this up. So I think there's a lot of different ways that you could adapt the material from the course structure. You could adapt just certain lectures or the in-class activities. Um, you could take stuff from the reading, our media list, our reflection prompts, or just our individual data dives. So there's a bunch of different areas where we hope that these materials are adaptable and that you could use in your own course. And to kind of go over some of the things that we learned, is this can be something that's super time and labor intensive, and that coordinating with our community partners, and this is something that we didn't mention, but before we even started this project, or before we officially got the grant, we had two different two different community partners, where one of the organization closed and didn't exist anymore. And so there's a lot of work going into that, and narrowing it, like having just one partner, or focusing on just one thing with that partner, and figuring that ahead of time can be something that that can be helpful. And don't go into the course thinking that you are able to just that you have it all planned out. You're going to have to be ready for compromise, and especially if you're going to be doing this partner work and also data collection through it. Um, but also another challenge is just kind of like figuring out how can we make this cost effective. I think for us, the thing that ended up being the most that we are kind of the most worried about is those hands-on hours that are located at different locations, that we knew that that was going to be costly for our students if they needed to travel to get there, and then also depending on their schedules. However, with all of those challenges, this class was extremely rewarding to teach. Our students, we got amazing feedback from our students. It resulted in multiple awards, including a scholarship, um, job opportunities for our students, and so in that case, it was very worth it. But I want to, since we've gone through this, we're hoping that these resources can make it easier for other folks to go through it. So again, thank you so much for your time. And we couldn't have done, like, I know that I'm presenting, but this was all work that Halley and Mandy also were a huge part of. And so I want to, one, thank them for being here and answering questions in the chat and providing links, but make sure that I shout out to them because they were a crucial part of this uh, course and building the OER resources. So if you have questions, feel free to contact us. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ashley. That was just such a fantastic presentation. I mean, just so comprehensive from the information on the curriculum development to all the resources. I saw lots of Creative Commons licenses as you were going through those resources. It's just really fantastic. I very much enjoyed your presentation. So thank you so much for coming and doing that for us today.
Thank you so much for having us.